For more than 3 decades, hip-hop has repeated the same explanation like it was settled history. That Ice Cube left N.W.A. because of money, that he got greedy, that success went to his head, that he walked away from the most dangerous group in music for a bigger check. It's a clean story, easy to remember, easy to repeat, and most importantly, easy for the industry to live with. Because if Ice Cube left over money, then the system worked. If he left over ego, then the contracts were fair. If he left because he wanted more, then no one else had to explain anything. But the truth is, that story only survives if you never ask who told it, and if you never ask who benefited from it. When N.W.A. exploded out of Compton in the late 1980s, they didn't just shock America, they terrified it. They didn't sound polished. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't explain themselves. They described police harassment, street violence, and systemic pressure in a way the mainstream had never heard before, and they did it without apology. At the center of that chaos wasn't just rage, it was structure. Lyrics with intent, narratives with purpose, words that cut straight through the noise. That structure came largely from Ice Cube, before Hollywood deals, before movie roles, before platinum solo albums. Ice Cube was the pen. While the public saw N.W.A. as a unit, the inside told a different story. Cube wasn't just another voice on the mic. He was writing verses, shaping themes, defining the tone. The aggression people feared wasn't accidental. It was written. Cube understood something early that many artists didn't yet see. Words were leverage, and leverage in any system is dangerous. As N.W.A.'s fame grew, so did the money. But the money didn't move the way most people assumed. Royalty checks didn't match the numbers being reported. Credits didn't always reflect contribution, and explanations were vague. Most artists at that stage were too distracted by visibility to notice. Ice Cube wasn't. He read, he asked questions, he didn't confuse attention with ownership. And that's where the story really begins. The moment Ice Cube started questioning the business, the narrative around him began to shift. Not publicly, not yet, but internally. Suddenly he wasn't the writer. He was difficult. He wasn't thinking ahead. He was disruptive. Every system reacts the same way when someone looks too closely. It isolates them. The industry prefers myths to explanations. Myths keep things simple. The artist got greedy. The group fell apart. It just didn't work out. Those phrases hide uncomfortable truths. Because the alternative is admitting that young artists were signed into deals they didn't control, that management held power far beyond the talent, and that success didn't always mean freedom. If Ice Cube was right, then the rebellion N.W.A. represented wasn't just against police or politics. It was against the music business itself, and that was a much more dangerous idea. So when Ice Cube eventually walked away, the industry didn't pause to understand why. It rushed to define the story before he could, and that definition followed him for years. He left over money. He wanted more than his share. He couldn't get along. But none of those explanations answer the real question. Why would someone walk away from guaranteed success at the exact moment the world was paying attention? Why would someone abandon momentum if money was the goal? The truth is, Ice Cube didn't leave chasing wealth. He left confronting a system he didn't trust, and systems don't forgive people who see through them early. In the years since, hip-hop has repeated this moment without examining it. Artists leave deals, groups break up, narratives are assigned, but rarely do people rewind the tape and ask who had control, who owned what, and who was being paid versus who was being used. Ice Cube asked those questions in real time, and the consequences of that decision shaped everything that came after. This story isn't about a breakup, it's about awareness. It's about a young artist realizing that fame without control is just another form of exploitation. And it's about what happens when someone refuses to play their assigned role. Because once Ice Cube understood the trap, staying would have cost him more than money. It would have cost him ownership of his voice. The music industry doesn't usually collapse artists with force. It uses paperwork. While fans see sold-out shows, magazine covers, and chart positions, the real power moves quietly. In offices, contracts, and signatures. That's where the trap is built. And that's where Ice Cube started paying attention. In the late 1980s, N.W.A. was no longer just controversial. They were profitable, records were selling, shows were drawing crowds, the group's name was everywhere. But when royalty statements arrived, the numbers didn't match the noise. For most artists at that stage, this wasn't unusual, it was ignored. Fame has a way of numbing suspicion. Ice Cube didn't ignore it, he looked closer. At the center of N.W.A.'s business dealings was Jerry Heller. Heller was experienced, connected, comfortable navigating a system that most young artists didn't understand yet. To the industry, he was stability. To Ice Cube, he was control. Here's what made Cube different from many of his peers. He didn't assume success meant fairness. He understood something critical. If you don't control the paperwork, you don't control the outcome. Cube began asking basic but dangerous questions. Where is the money actually going? Who owns the publishing? Why are writing credits unclear? Why do the contracts feel permanent, but the payments feel temporary? These weren't emotional questions. They were structural ones, and structural questions threaten systems. The contracts N.W.A. signed reflected a common industry formula at the time. The label controls distribution, management controls finances, artists receive visibility, not ownership. To young rappers breaking barriers, this was framed as opportunity. But Ice Cube saw the imbalance early. The group created the content, the group carried the risk, yet control sat elsewhere. And that's when the tone shifted. Cube's curiosity began to feel like resistance. Meetings became defensive, answers became vague, discussions turned into dismissals. He wasn't being reassured, he was being managed. Inside N.W.A., not everyone wanted to push back. Some members believed patience would pay off. Some believed success would eventually even things out. Some trusted the system because it was finally working in their favor. Ice Cube didn't share that faith. He knew systems rarely reward people who don't own their leverage. The tension wasn't just financial, it was philosophical. Cube believed artists should understand what they were signing. The industry believed artists should be grateful. Those two beliefs cannot coexist for long. As Cube continued to press for transparency, the resistance hardened. Not publicly, privately. He wasn't attacked directly, he was isolated. In business, isolation is a warning. It means you've stepped outside the role designed for you. Ice Cube's role was to write, perform, and stay quiet. By reading contracts, he violated that expectation. At some point, Cube realized something unsettling. The system wasn't broken, it was working exactly as intended. Young artists created value. Managers and labels extracted control, and narratives were used to keep everything in place. The moment an artist noticed, they became a problem. That's when Ice Cube understood the real cost of staying. It wasn't money, it was silence. Staying meant accepting limited ownership, restricted autonomy, long-term dependency. Leaving meant risk, but also freedom. When Cube raised concerns more aggressively, the reaction wasn't compromise. It was pressure. He was told to trust the process, to focus on the music, to stop overthinking. But trust the process is often code for don't look too closely. The breaking point wasn't a single argument, it was accumulation. Each unanswered question, each deflected concern, each moment where transparency was avoided. Ice Cube didn't feel heard, he felt managed. And in the music business, being managed is acceptable, being aware is not. Eventually, the decision became unavoidable. Ice Cube faced a choice most artists never make in time. Stay quiet, and benefit short term. Or leave, speak up and sacrifice immediate comfort for long-term control. There was no middle ground. When Ice Cube chose to walk away, it shocked everyone watching from the outside. Why would someone abandon momentum? Why would someone leave the most feared group in hip-hop? Why would someone step away when success was guaranteed? Those questions only make sense if money was the goal. If control was the goal, then leaving was inevitable. The industry moved quickly after Cube's exit. The story had to be framed before the questions spread. He wanted more money. He got greedy. He couldn't work with the team. That explanation closed the case neatly, and it kept the contracts out of the conversation. But contracts don't disappear. They linger. And the lessons Ice Cube learned during that period would shape everything that followed. Because once you see how the trap works, you can never unsee it. Ice Cube didn't leave N.W.A. impulsively. He left deliberately, because he understood that staying silent would cost him something far more valuable than a paycheck. When people talk about Ice Cube leaving N.W.A., They usually imagine one moment, a fight, a blow-up, a dramatic walkout. That's not how it happened. The truth is quieter, and that's what makes it more dangerous. By the time Ice Cube's concerns about contracts and control became impossible to ignore, the group itself was already under pressure. Success had arrived faster than stability. N.W.A. wasn't just making music anymore. They were managing fame, money, attention, and expectations all at once. And those forces don't pull people together. They pull them apart. Inside the group, lines were forming. Not openly, not verbally, but emotionally. Some members believed the system could be navigated from the inside. Some believed patience would lead to leverage. Some believed rocking the boat would cost everyone. Ice Cube didn't believe in patience without proof. And that belief isolated him. This is the part of the story fans don't like to confront, because it's uncomfortable. Ice Cube wasn't betrayed by strangers, he was betrayed by silence. When Cube raised concerns, he expected discussion. Instead, he got avoidance. No one told him he was wrong. They just stopped engaging. In group dynamics, that's the beginning of the end. What made the situation worse was the imbalance of power. Management had authority, labels had contracts, artists had visibility. When Cube challenged the structure, he wasn't just pushing against paperwork, he was pushing against momentum, and momentum always resists disruption. Behind closed doors, Cube was no longer seen as a partner. He was seen as a liability. Not because he lacked talent, but because he asked questions, and questions slow things down. This is where loyalty becomes complicated. From the outside, loyalty looks like unity. From the inside, loyalty often looks like compliance. Ice Cube refused to confuse the two. At some point, Cube understood that the group would continue, with or without his consent. The system didn't need him to agree, it only needed him quiet. And that's when the emotional cost became clear. Staying meant compromising principles, leaving meant being misunderstood. Neither option came without loss. When Ice Cube finally made the decision to leave, it wasn't announced with drama. There was no press conference, no manifesto. He stepped away, and the silence that followed was louder than any argument. The moment he left, the narrative filled the vacuum. It always does. He wanted more money. He couldn't get along. He broke up the group. Those statements traveled faster than facts, because they didn't require explanation. From the industry's perspective, the story was perfect. One artist leaves, the group continues, the business remains intact. No need to talk about contracts, no need to discuss ownership, no need to examine power. The problem had a name: Ice Cube. This is how systems protect themselves. They personalize structural problems. They turn awareness into attitude. They turn resistance into ego, and they let the narrative do the rest. What followed was predictable. Interviews framed Cube as difficult. Industry whispers questioned his loyalty. The idea of greed stuck, because it was easier to believe. But here's what never quite added up. If Ice Cube left over money, why did he walk away from guaranteed income? If Ice Cube was chasing a bigger check, why did he risk everything at the height of success? Greed doesn't behave that way. Principle does. As N.W.A. continued without him, the cracks began to show. Internal tensions didn't disappear. They simply shifted. Legal issues surfaced, relationships strained. The structure Cube warned about began revealing itself. But by then, the story had already been written. Ice Cube watched this from the outside, not as a spectator, as someone who saw it coming. He didn't respond immediately. He didn't rush to defend himself. He did what he had always done best. He prepared. When Cube finally spoke, it wasn't through press releases. It was through music. And music doesn't lie quietly. His solo work didn't just establish independence. It documented experience. Every verse carried context. Every bar carried memory. Not bitterness, clarity. Cube wasn't trying to destroy N.W.A. He was trying to explain why he couldn't stay. But explanations don't survive when systems need villains. Over time, the public accepted the simplified version. Groups break up, egos clash, money causes problems. It fit the pattern people were used to, and it spared them from asking harder questions. But beneath the surface, the lesson was already spreading. Other artists were watching, noticing, learning, reading contracts, asking questions, because Ice Cube wasn't the last person to see the trap. He was just one of the first to leave it early. The exit wasn't explosive, it was surgical, and that's why it mattered. Ice Cube didn't leave N.W.A. in anger. He left in awareness. And awareness, once gained, makes return impossible. History has a way of answering questions that people argue about for years. Not through opinions, not through interviews, but through outcomes. If Ice Cube really left N.W.A. over money, then the years that followed should have punished that decision. They didn't. They validated it. After leaving N.W.A., Ice Cube stepped into a moment most artists never survive. He had no safety net, no guaranteed radio support, no industry protection. What he had was autonomy, and that changed everything. His solo debut didn't sound cautious. It sounded focused, not angry for the sake of anger, not reckless, not desperate. It sounded like someone who understood exactly what he was doing. Ice Cube wasn't chasing relevance, he was defining independence. While N.W.A. continued without him, the internal problems Cube had warned about didn't disappear. They surfaced. Legal battles began to stack up. Management relationships fractured. Creative unity weakened. The structure that once held everything together started showing stress fractures. The trap Cube walked away from closed in on those who stayed. This is the part of the story that's often skipped, because it complicates the narrative. If Ice Cube was greedy, then his departure should have hurt him more than anyone else. Instead, it freed him. As his solo career grew, something important happened. Cube gained leverage, not just financially, structurally. He controlled his voice, he owned his direction, he chose his collaborations, and eventually, he expanded beyond music. Film didn't rescue Ice Cube. Film rewarded preparation. Because the same awareness that made him question music contracts allowed him to navigate Hollywood without losing himself. He didn't arrive asking for permission. He arrived with terms. Ownership became the pattern, not accident, not luck, pattern. Ice Cube understood something most artists learn too late. Fame is rented, control is built. Meanwhile, N.W.A.'s legacy became complicated. Their impact remained undeniable, their influence permanent. But the group as an entity could not survive the business pressures Cube had identified early. Success amplified everything, including imbalance, and imbalance always demands a cost. Over time, public opinion softened. As more artists spoke out about unfair deals, as more stories surfaced about exploitation, as more contracts were exposed, Ice Cube's departure began to look less like betrayal and more like foresight. The hip-hop industry itself evolved because of moments like this. Artists began asking harder questions, managers faced more scrutiny, ownership became part of the conversation. Not enough, but more than before, and that matters. What makes Ice Cube's decision so important isn't just that he left, it's when he left. He didn't wait until the damage was irreversible. He didn't stay quiet until resentment turned into regret. He acted while he still had options. That timing is everything. Most artists discover the trap when it's already closed. Ice Cube saw it while the door was still open. This story isn't about right versus wrong. It's about awareness versus comfort. Staying with N.W.A. would have been easier, more predictable, more profitable in the short term. Leaving required uncertainty, but it also required integrity. And integrity doesn't always look heroic in real time. Sometimes it looks like isolation. Misunderstanding, criticism. Ice Cube accepted all three. Years later, when people revisit the breakup of N.W.A., the question usually asked is, who was at fault? That question misses the point. The better question is, who understood the system first? Ice Cube didn't destroy N.W.A. The business model did. He simply refused to pretend it wasn't happening. That's why this story still matters, because hip-hop hasn't escaped that tension. Artists still face contracts they don't fully control. Ownership is still uneven. Narratives are still used to protect systems. The names change, the structure doesn't. Every time an artist leaves a deal early, every time someone is labeled difficult for asking questions, every time awareness is framed as ego, this story repeats. Ice Cube didn't leave N.W.A. because of money. He left because he understood the price of staying silent. And silence, in any industry, is never free. That decision reshaped his life. It reshaped his career, and it quietly reshaped hip-hop. Because the most dangerous thing an artist can become is informed.